What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of With All Due Respect. I'm Marcus Flowers. That's our good friend Madeline Summerville
Hey
joining
there.
us from. Where are you joining us from today, Maddie?
Not Rome, Georgia. This is
Not Rome,
Rome,
Georgia.
Italy. I proved it by showing a picture of the bust that's in this apartment. Here, wait. I
Other
can't
side.
even.
There it is.
There it is. That's the proof.
I mean, talk about dedication. She's joining us while she's out on vacation, enjoying some time with the family, and we appreciate you,
Democracy is
Maddie.
important, you know?
It's what 9 o'clock in the evening there. Man,
Hmm.
that is dedication. But again, everybody, this is the show where we cut through the noise, we call out the nonsense, and we actually talk about what is happening. Not the version that you're going to get under press release, and definitely not the version you're going to get from people who think that yelling is a substitute for leadership. Every week, we bring you real conversations with people who are in the fight, candidates, organizers, experts, folks who aren't just talking about making change, but are actually out there trying to make change happen. And then we break down the headlines because let's be honest, the news cycle right now, it's a lot. War, politics, culture, it's all colliding, and somebody's got to make sense of it. So, whether you're here to stay informed, get fired up, or just hear somebody say something that you've been thinking all week, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Let me tell you, today, people, we've got a really good guest here today. Someone who's running for a House seat in Georgia. I've been really inspired by her story. She's an HTL or Fields of Change endorsed candidate. I think you guys are going to really like her and like what she's all about. So without further ado, Maddie, you ready to get into it? Bring her
Let's
out.
do it.
Hey, let's welcome our good friend Sabrina Newby, who's running for Georgia
Aw,
House of Representatives. Welcome
Welcome.
to
thank
the
you
show,
guys so
Sabrina.
much.
Hey
Thank you
there.
guys so much. I'm so
Thank you
excited
so
to be
much for
here.
coming on.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
thank you
Thank
for coming
you.
on and talking with us today. So without further ado, let me start it off and just a question that I ask everybody: what motivated you to run for Georgia House, and how has your personal and professional background shaped your priorities?
Okay, so um, I was inspired to run because within the last years of 2015 to 2025, our current state representative wrote no impactful legislative actions other than ceremonial. So that's what got me here. Um, Over the years, I have been helping many of our politicians get into seats. And I didn't know if I wanted to be an elected person or if I just wanted to be behind the scenes because I was most effective with that. However, at this
We both been there.
moment, and with everyone basically saying that they are hurting, they need something, they need hope, and they need all the things that everyone's crying for, especially with the rising property taxes here in Liberty County.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, if not me, then who? So, with everything I bring to the table, my education, my work within the community, my work with legislation, my work with other elected officials, I'm here. And I think I'm going to do a pretty good job.
I tell you, Sabrina, that resonates so much with me. I know you've, and we're going to get into your background with DoD. Army guy. You know, logistics is my background, compliance is my background. I spent 30 years being that person behind the scene.
Mhm.
Never thought I'd get into this political world, mind you. I mean, I was not afraid to say it. I was apolitical for the vast majority of those 30 years because that's kind of what you're taught. You don't talk about
Yeah.
politics, especially in the military
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
government. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
You support the mission. So when I stepped out to run against Marjorie Taylor Greene, I was stepping way outside of my comfort zone. Didn't know what I
Yeah.
didn't know, but again, I knew how government worked. Used to write war reports for Congress, things like that. So, I just like you, I felt I needed to serve in a different way. And for me,
Right.
January 6th was that moment that
Right.
compelled me to step out of the way I was serving to serve in a different way. So
Yeah.
your story, and we're
And I
going
was a speech writer for the Georgia State Senate, and I couldn't get people to say what I wanted them to say. So I had to say it myself. So I'm used to being behind the scenes in political media, or as a jury consultant, because I'm an attorney by trade, directing things from behind the scenes and telling people what steps to take. And I'm much better when I'm out of the spotlight. But if nobody's going to say the thing that needs to be said, then I don't have a choice. You just got to step up. So it sounds like you did the same thing in your community. Like you saw that there was something that needed to be done in your community that made you want to step up. So I'm curious about what those things were. What did you see that you wanted to that motivated you? What was missing?
2015, I started what we needed. I was a business owner. My husband and I had opened businesses throughout Georgia. However, the minority business community was not thriving. Specifically here in Liberty County, we had like a 5% rate of minority businesses, and every year some more were closing. So after launching a successful business, I thought I had something to offer so I could help our businesses excel and grow here within Liberty County. That's when I learned that politics and business are two sides of the same coin. Most business owners do not like to get involved with politics. They just don't. And it's unfortunate because these are the people who are basically holding up businesses from opening. They're making you go out and buy things that you may or may not need to open. And they're eventually deciding who opens and who closes. So after I learned that, I started advocating on behalf of business owners. I'm like, look, in order to have a home-based business, after you get your certification from the state, then you have to register your business with the city. Then you have to be determined by an attorney. So that's another $150 if you can operate a business out of your home. I'm like thinking this is excessive. I mean, this is just too much. So with that being said, I learned, I navigated, I talked to, and after a while you get tired of talking because there's nothing being fruitful. You're not making anything happen. So I understood in order for me to really change things, I had to get involved with policy. Well, locally,
let me jump in there real quick. You're also in an area where there's a huge military base.
Yes. Yes.
So there's even other level of hurdles for doing business with federal contracts, which I'm sure a lot of people in your community, want to do.
Yes. Now, one of the things I knew that you have DBE, which is the disadvantaged business owner, you have veteran-owned businesses. So it was very hard for these businesses to get certifications. And my question, even though we had a specialized office that handled that, we weren't getting any sort of business, any sort of action, any sort of anything. So I sort of took up the mantle and I'm like, let's go, let's see what I need to do. And then I started going to the state legislature. I started to get involved with different things. I learned how they moved. And then I brought those tools back to Lee County. We were able to raise the business rate from a 5% to 13%. Just basically getting involved. Even though we had entities in place to help these businesses, there was really a lackluster effect in doing that. So with that being said, it kind of caused a lot of trouble because you had the elected officials thinking, well, who does she think she is? And she didn't get our permission. That was the most thing that I heard. I did not ask permission to do the things that I was doing. So that kind of frustrated me. And I just kind of went from there. I'm like, I brought in every weapon that I could find, from education to mentoring, you name it, I did it. And here we are.
Well, coming from a boy from Troy, the birthplace of John Lewis, another boy from Troy is me. That sounds like good trouble as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Definitely.
Good trouble is necessary.
Definitely.
What John said is
Yes.
necessary. And, I'm used to that as well, because some people looked at me as a bull in the china shop a little bit because I didn't ask permission to do anything. So came out and did it, So
I think the military has something to do with that. I think, we are taught to do the job, whatever it takes, you make the mission happen. So with that being said, we see people hurt, we make it happen. I don't think that one of the things that I know is a major hiccup is when military transition from military world to civilian world.
Mhm.
That's another thing. We're outsiders,
Yeah.
or as they call us, come here's. We're not from here. And with
Yeah.
that said, we bring a lot of talent with us. So I think when you're coming into rural communities, that's kind of threatening.
Yeah.
There may be a feeling that you're taking over, you're going to take over with your new modern ways. But at the end of the day, we just want to help our community grow and be an asset to it, especially when we've determined that this is where we're going to retire. And this is what we did. We retired here, and we really wanted to be be a benefit to the community.
Absolutely. I mean, and you see that a lot in, like for those of you who aren't familiar with Liberty County, Fort Stewart, Georgia, which is one of the
Yes.
largest military bases, in the country, is right there in Liberty County. So, and you
Yes.
see it all over the place where a lot of people will, where there's Fort Bragg or wherever, they retire and stay in those communities because, a lot of the soldiers have been there for years and they've
Mhm.
made these places their home. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you get some of these bigger
Yeah.
bases, you've probably been there 3 or 4 times in your career, and you get to a place where you spent 8, 9, 10, 12 years. It starts to feel like
Mhm.
home. You become a part of that community. Your friends are there. You got people who retire and stick around. You've bought a home in these
Mhm.
communities. So why
Yeah.
not be a part of those communities as well instead of
Absolutely.
going back somewhere else where
Absolutely.
you're basically starting over again,
Absolutely. When we arrived here in 2001, I told my husband, I said, I'm not moving again. This is home. I mean, this is really this reminds me of my home. I'm from Louisiana, and we are surrounded by the water. We live off the land. So this is pretty much like home. And my husband fell in it. He's from Kentucky. He fell in love with it as well. But I do believe that
It's a
there
beautiful
was a
community.
yeah, it definitely is. It's a beautiful community. And when people come here and they experience coastal Georgia for the first time, they fall in love with it. Romance about coastal Georgia be denied. So we want to keep that romance alive, but not just for those who were born here, but for those that are coming here and wanting to be contributors to Liberty County.
Yeah. Sabrina, you often reference your mother's influence on
Mm.
you, and tell me a little bit about how that translate into the specific policies that you focus on, and why you think the way you do and your approach on policy, and how that'll
So
translate to Georgia House, State House.
growing up, we were very poor. But I mean, when I tell people we were very poor, I was in the ninth grade and I was wearing a size 8 shoe, but I had to wear my oldest sister's shoe who wore a size 10. That's how poor we were because
Yeah.
we couldn't afford new shoes. My mother was a maid, and she basically did the best that she could with us. We were on all the social programs, food stamps, you name it. We were getting government aid, commodity cheese. I don't know if you all are familiar with that commodity
We
peanut
called it
butter
government
that comes.
cheese. I grew
Government
up poor as
cheese.
well
Yes.
in the South,
Yeah.
rural Alabama.
So,
That's what we called it as a kid.
so
Now, this is the late 70s, early 80s, so I'm a little bit
yeah,
older.
so
Yeah.
we would get the commodity peanut butter that came in a big old metal
Yep.
tin can, and we had to dig it out. It was so hard. But my mother, I was very young, and my mother was a single a woman for many years. Um, she was very strong. She was very strong. So when she married my stepfather, who's my biological father, who I love, though he's not my biological father, he is my biological father. I hope you guys understand when I say that.
Same.
But
Yep.
We get
you
it.
got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So when she did marry him, he worked at a chemical plant. So we thought we were like the Jefferson. We were on our way up, but he had a stroke. So that put my mother back into the working field. I just saw all of the hardships that my mother went through. But even in that hardship, she never stopped her dedication from giving to the community. If there was someone in need, even though we didn't have a lot, if there was someone in need, my mother would give them a couch to sleep on. She would cook. When we got food stamps, she would, even with us, she would take some of the food and she said, oh, such and such needs something, So she was always helping the community, always helping the community. So when she retired with no benefits, she retired after raising 9 children with no benefits. When I became an adult and I got married and I would go home, my mother never stopped her community service. I would go in the house, there's someone there she's feeding, there's someone there that this guy that she's giving them a room, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, she just never stopped her caring. As
What's
an
your name?
adult, within the last Evelyn Jules Coleman Tanton.
Thank you.
So, and she's
I love names.
real Jewel. Yes,
Yeah.
she was a real jewel. She still is, because she inspires me to be the same way. I carry that over into this time of my life because I realize helping people is a necessity, but it's also very political. So as I move about, I often explain to people that, this is something that was passed down. It wasn't just a lineage. She passed down a purpose, and I continue to work in that purpose. I've heard some people say, well, helping people is not purpose work. I'm like, I don't know who told you that, but it is definitely my purpose work.
And it's a core value. I mean, it's being selfless. I mean, you
Yes.
describing your mother, it just reminds me of my grandmother who was a cook. I mean, and she cooked in restaurants in the South that she could never
Yes.
afford to eat in or take her family to sit down and have a meal in. And she worked up until she couldn't anymore, like 6 months before she actually passed away. But she was that woman who, she'd cook on Sundays at the church, and if there's any special function or funeral or wedding or whatever, she'd be at the church cooking after she cooked the entire day, and that just reminds me, I think that's part of a place where people like us get that, servant's heart, serving people,
Right.
giving what you can, even if you don't have a lot. I mean, my grandmother didn't have hardly anything, barely had a roof over her head, but that was how she gave, that was how she
Yeah.
showed love through food and giving what she could
Yeah.
and doing what she could, which was cooking. So
I think it's interesting because
Absolutely.
from a like a practical kind of perspective, first of all, and I like doing this with the candidates that come on the show because as like a media professional, I like to kind of analyze a little bit of what the person is saying to kind of help you move forward also with going on, especially going on channels that are less friendly than us who like walk in and we love you immediately. Not that everyone isn't going to love you. I'm sure they will, but it feels like you're in the fire sometimes. Take it from me, I'm on Newsmax. So, so one of the things that you said from the beginning reminded me a little bit of Michelle Wu's story, who's the mayor of Boston. And she really struggled with her family's business specifically, and it made her insane. And she saw how many regulations there were that impeded her family's ability to succeed. And then it sort of translated into healthcare issues too. But it was a matter of navigating the infrastructure, like the state's infrastructure, and how it didn't make sense. And she figured out how to make sense of it. And so at the end of the day, it was like, well, I learned how to navigate all of this. I don't want all this knowledge to go to waste, basically. Or like, it just shouldn't be this hard for the next person if I've figured this out already. And a lot of Republicans sort of characterize Democrats as not good at dealing with regulations because we love regulations on the federal level. We are super for it. On the state level, though, we are well aware that it's not about ethics on the state level. On the state level, it's about, garnering favor from one person or another. Sometimes regulations make sense, but sometimes they don't, which is why people like Elizabeth Warren are trying to get rid of a lot of state regulations. So in this case, I think it's interesting because having problems dealing with regulations is not something that Democrats usually talk about. But I think that it's a unique issue that you can offer, especially in a place where you might have some Republican voters, especially considering the amount of military folks around where you live.
Mhm.
So having that sort of like business background and business mindset, and specifically dealing with regulations, I think is really, really great. It's just something that I don't hear very often, that I think is a really good place to start. And we've had a couple of candidates who've come on who've talked about the person that inspired them. It's two in particular. And I think that really does make you fall in love with somebody when you see where their inspiration comes from, and actually there was one other, you remember Noah, Marcus, when we had Noah on, and he was talking about another candidate who's running in Arkansas, I think it was. Where is it?
Kansas.
Where he was talking about how his father gave when he had nothing to give. And that, like, obviously that story stuck with me because I'm bringing it back up now, and so I think that means something. Now, what is it? So we talk generally, right, a little bit here and there about what you have to give in terms of your personal experience and your background. But what is it that, like Marcus was talking about his grandmother and cooking, and what is it that you feel like you personally specifically have to give? We've talked about it generally, but what about specifically, especially in terms of what your district needs?
Well, I am committed to the district. I think a lot of times when people get elected, I think they start with commitment. But somewhere, especially if they're staying in for a very long time, they lose that commitment, or it dissolves at some point. The commitment to the seat.
23 years, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, the commitment to the seat is one thing, but the commitment to the people is something completely different. I truly have a commitment to my community, and my community needs someone that is going to truly represent and fight for them. I'm a fighter. I think that was also birthed through my mother. And I am
comes from mother.
committed to. Yes, it always back to
That's where it comes from.
That's why I wanted to get that out, because I love that part about your story. That your mom.
You knew I love that too. I know he knew I love that.
Yes, I'm like, seriously, because one of the things that what people, I didn't even know that that people thought that my willingness to help and take on this commitment was seen as offensive, but I think that's how I came up with the term helping people is political, because they felt that I was treading on them, and I was treading on their roles. But this is something that is inside me, that I feel that, you are truly purposed to contribute back into the world. This is something
Tell me more about that.
Kind
what do you mean by offended people? Like, what did you do give me an example of what happened.
I would say exist as a woman, but that may be offensive.
No, you can say that here. You're in the right place.
I can say that here. Okay.
You can say
But,
that.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that
as a woman. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm like
I
thinking,
take it very seriously.
no. It's so real, because I would come home, I would literally knock my head against the wall. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Well, I learned what I was doing wrong. Honestly, when you're a woman and you are not operating under the auspice of those in leadership, particularly men, but there are some women, they feel that you are their ultimate villain, and they want to come after you. And then this is when all of the things the rumors and all the things that starts, because when I first launched the chamber, they sent out a letter throughout the community saying that I was a Black militant, and it had everybody totally afraid of me. And I'm like thinking, what? They said that I was a Black militant. I was coming in and I was called the devil. I went to a church prayer meeting, and I was invited to come. I just didn't know. The launch of the newspaper's interview came out the same day for the Coastal Chamber. So I went, and I'm thinking that everything is going to be wonderful. We're going to celebrate. I get in the church, and the pastor literally calls me the devil. because how dare I come here and I want to start a minority chamber.
We
Now,
are
this was
digging
so
into this.
awesome.
Get ready because we are digging into this. Okay, so it's what it sounds like to me is that
Mhm.
you wanted a position of leadership within your community, right? Especially as it pertained to business, right? Because you said you launched a chamber. What was the chamber that
Yes.
you launched?
Coastal Georgia Minority Chamber.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so first, it was inspired because when we first started our business here in Liberty County, we were meeting every Friday at my store. We were inviting other businesses,
What
other business
store?
owners.
What's your store?
It was Total B, meaning a total beauty exuding empowerment. And that was derived from when I worked for the DOD. I had a new male boss that came in. He was an older gentleman. I love him to this day, but he inspired the bee in me, if I will. So he was interviewing all of us, just getting to know us, and I was the only woman in our field. So he says, "Tell me how you like to lead." And I told him, I said, "Well, I believe in mission first, the typical militant language or military language." And he turns to me, he said, "Well, Miss Newby, there are other ways to get things done other than being a bitch."
Hey.
So
That same comment coming from me is not taken that way. I'm
Yeah.
always mission oriented, so nobody ever calls me a B.
Exactly.
They can try it. But
I tell you, I sat there, I did sit there, and because it was all men, I did there. And then I told my husband when I came home, and he's like, "I'm going to see him." I'm like, "No, you're not. He outranks you."
I hear him though. I know, but I hear him.
Yeah.
Like I get it.
Let's
Yeah,
work
I
this out.
do.
I'm really
Totally.
good at working around a pothole, and that was just a pothole. That's how I saw it. So being a total B, or however he wanted to deem what the BITCH was to him, I took that and I created Total B, which was the headquarters name for my company, and we just kind of
What
like
does your
went from
company do?
there. Well, it started off being an inspiration to women that were in powerful positions, but they were getting the backlash from the male dominated field. I then went on to create a product that my grandmother had always used on our hair, and I called it the bougie natural, because if you're an educated woman, they're considering uppity or bougie, and so I call it bougie natural. Our product was picked up in Walmart, and then we had opened 5 stores here in the state of Georgia.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that allowed me to leave my job working for the DOD after 18 years.
You're an Energizer bunny.
I mean, let me get this.
I am.
Let me get this straight. You were basically serving the function of a chamber out of your storefront,
Right.
out of your brick and mortar.
Yeah.
And then you decided to just go ahead and start a chamber of commerce in the county.
See, I love
And
this
that was a
framing.
bad thing.
I'm very into this
Why?
story.
Maybe it's just me, but I fail to understand that.
Right. I'm super into the story. Okay. So I know very well Ashwin. There's a young man who is Indian who was running in a very Republican district, and they put out some super racist pamphlets and sent them out to make him look like he was like a terrorist or something.
Ashwin Ramaswamy, yeah,
he's like, "Oh, I'm Hindu." Like, first of all, second, like, I don't know what you're even accusing me of, and second of all, what?
Also, he ran a great campaign.
Yeah, and so you're not alone in this, and I feel like when it comes to getting donors, that's something that people who aren't even in Georgia can absolutely get behind, because you're standing for something that's important.
Yes, I like to believe so. I did endure a lot starting the chamber, from the rumors to the letters. And these were all coming from people who were either appointed or elected. So we had moved up. We were able to get this really big store that we owned. And suddenly there was a fire there. So I thank God one of my employees was able to call me and said, "Did you know the store is on fire?" And I'm like, "What?" Someone had there was a metal trash can in front of the door, a metal and stone trash can. So someone had put something in there to influence the fire because a cigarette can't do that. And it literally burned all the way down. I did not get any sort of information because they didn't call me for whatever reason. I think it was definitely a warning. But when I did have the chief of the I think he was a captain of the fire department to come to my store and sit with me, he said, you know, he kind of confirmed my suspicion, and he just told me to be careful. That became the mantra for most of the elected officials, you know, be careful. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because people truly need help. I don't believe in operating in fear. That is not integrated into faith. So my purpose was to keep moving, and we did. We kept moving, and we built something really phenomenal. We went from having little meetings in our first store to launching out literally statewide, and we started to take on a lot of members for our chamber. But one of the main thing was I wasn't allowed to freely operate the chamber. It was they wanted to dictate to me how the chamber was supposed to be fully orchestrated. So it was, you need to operate
chamber that they didn't want.
The chamber that they didn't want. The chamber that they didn't want. So that was basically, that was a frustration because I'm like, I want to be an economic development chamber. And this was really more so bothersome to me because they didn't even know how the traditional chamber worked. So with that being said, someone pushed down on me ideas to the point it had gotten so overwhelming that when I was literally, I had to go before city council every 3 months. I'm like, for what? For what? It's not like I can really do whatever, but I did it. I did whatever they asked me to until we got to a point where I wasn't able to get any contract movement because the person that was over the contractual program was not being effective. I got to the point where more businesses were having to jump through more hurdles. I don't know if that was because of me and, you know, basically trying to do what I needed to do or trying to help the people. I don't know. But it gotten to the point where I was asked to come before council and talk about the market that I had launched for the chamber. And I went to the city council meeting that day and I was officially locked out. And that's when I realized, okay, it's time for me to cut ties and move in a different way. And that's just what I did.
So one of the things, and I'll stop after this, going down this path, because I'm very interested in this though. Just this last piece. So we had a candidate on last week, a very, very smart, wonderful young man named Duro Haynes, who's running, what district is he running in, Marcus?
He's in Clayton County. He's
Clayton
running
County.
for yes, state senate.
Wonderful young man, brilliant. And one of the things that he identified that I knew to be true just from having interned in the Georgia State Legislature when I was in school is that there is a general mentality being in the minority, like being in the minority party, that you can't get anything done, so we should just give up. It's been there. And I remember thinking to myself when I was just like literally the lowest person in the office there, thinking, dang, if I ever come back here. Oh yeah.
Can I plug this in? Okay.
I'm just in. Okay. Yes. You do what you gotta do. Yes. I was just saying, you know, when you're in the minority party, you can't get anything done. And so having that attitude is something that for me as a Democrat is a non-starter.
Right.
Like that's just something that, you know, you're all good. And so I think that you're a little bit the opposite of that, where it's like, I'm certainly not taking no for an answer. It's cute.
Yeah, you know, one of the things, you know, the things that happens is the fact that I really do believe. So if you're not familiar with Liberty County, it's a majority African-American town. So that being said, you know, there's a lot of, we have over 350 churches in this community alone.
Wow.
There is a lot of integrated biblical thought on how the passage of the baton should be. You have to get permission. You're structurally elder than you're the young person. No matter how old you are still the child. No matter what position they hold. If you are the voter, you're still the child. Have this mindset that, it's respectful, and I understand it coming from Louisiana. However, when you see
I get it as
someone
well. I don't
driving
agree
off
with it.
of a cliff,
I get it.
yeah, I don't agree with it, but it's a part of our livelihoods. We understand it. But when you see someone, your very community going over a cliff, and all you have to do is tell them to turn the wheel and you're going to be in a safer place, and they refuse because you're young, you're not from here, you're a woman, you think because you're educated, you know more than me. You get all of the things. That's the problem. That's the problem. Yeah, you get
but
all of it.
So all you have to do is just open your mind a little bit.
Yeah. And look, and I'm not trying to take over your wheel. I'm just telling you to just turn it just a little bit.
Yeah. Sabrina,
oh my God.
I've been called all kinds of things like ageist and this, that, and the other. And, the mission for Hold the Line and Fields of Change is to elect the next generation of Democratic leadership. That's our whole mission.
Right.
I mean, how long have we sat back and had, our elders who are, and our stalwarts, some of them say, we're going to pass the baton. We're just keeping things there for you. And you need some of that institutional knowledge. Yes, of course.
Right.
But
absolutely,
for guys like me, I'm in my 50s. My generation, we're in our 50s.
Right.
We are ready to lead.
Right.
That baton has been passed to us now. And some of those younger than us are already leaders and are ready to lead as well, to take us into a different direction. I mean, that's, you can't do. And again, I get it. I've seen it in politics for decades, in certain places, like Chicago's. You got to wait your turn,
Yeah.
when so-and-so leaves.
That's huge here.
And that happens here in Georgia as well. It happened to me. I was told to wait my turn, which is why I kind of told you. People kind of look at me as a bull in a china shop.
So you're in good company, my friend.
But we
roll here.
It's just one of those things.
All right,
let me bring us back on track. Let me ask this question. So being the first in your family to graduate from college, how do you plan to expand access to higher education and workforce pathways for others in similar situations as you?
Great question.
Specifically like rural counties.
That is a great question. Right now, what I do understand is, and I had to understand this, not everyone is interested in going to college, So let me tell you a little bit story about me and how I got to become a college graduate. I was growing up, like I said, we grew up in a poor family. So I was bullied a whole lot. I went to my mother and I asked her if she could send me away. I didn't know where she could send me, maybe stay with a cousin or something, but she said no. My sister told me about the adult education program. This is a 15-year-old who was very good at doing classwork, who was in a gifted class, but at the same time, I was being so affected by the bullying that I couldn't function. So I went and I got a GED. For years, I was embarrassed by that. But I came to understand that, my sister used to refer to me as the ugly duckling, but there are a million ugly ducklings out there, and that is what kind of inspired me to go and to get my degree, to become the swan that I thought I wanted to be.
Okay, so but what I know now is swan. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a black swan,
right? White swan, black swan.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I take that story with me when I go and I talk to young people, but I do know for a fact that young people, not everyone is meant for college. Not everyone's going to go to college, but they are interested in having a healthy income coming in. So that could be trade schools. That could be just basically tapping into their inner entrepreneur, getting them just seeking out mentors, because that's what I did. I didn't have those mentors that were accessible when I had my business. What I did was I made myself available to be in the room where all the big names were, and that's how I was able to collect the mentors that was going to help me on that road, that pathway to now. So I want them to understand that I don't want them to mimic my story, but I want them to create their own, whatever that looks like. And I feel like the right people will help celebrate that and will help them fund that and help them get to where they need to be. But everything is not an option school, but if they are interested in school, what schools want to do here in Liberty County is we need more schools, because our school systems are crowded. I would like to see more. We don't have an outlet of HBCUs. I know a lot of children that are in the 12th grade, they're interested in attending an HBCU. That was my first college. And I would love to have an outlet here, like an off-campus school here for them to experience that lifestyle. But it would be truly, solely, and totally up to them as to what they want to do. And then based off of that, because the conversation around education is changing every day. I want to be able to pick up what they've put down for me, and then I want to be able to beautifully sculpt where we can take them, and I want them to be okay with that.
That's very
Love it.
I mean this in like the least gendered way possible, but because I identify with this so much, I'm going to say it. Like, that's a very motherly sort of approach to growth. You know what I mean? But can I say that we need that so bad in government right now? Because it's like I love you for just the way you are. I'm going to take what you give me and help you raise it within that. And I think that I love how, I'm so sorry, Marcus. I love how feminine this conversation has become, because there's a kind of feminine power that exists that you have.
Yes.
And it's
I'm a feminist, so.
Right. Totally. It reminds me of you too. It's just wonderful, but it feels so good to see. And I know that you come from a background where that's been where that's been looked at as a disadvantage. And I hope that as you continue your journey in politics, that you just lean hard into it, because it's obviously what your natural gift is.
Yeah. And I love the way you answer that question. My daddy taught trades for 36 years. And even after he retired from teaching, he still taught the trades to people who, just needed to learn a trade and have jobs. This man could build a house ground up by himself if he needed to. And he taught that to people. That was his gift as well. So, and it gave people their livelihoods. I mean,
I love that.
You people all over the state that talk about my dad and how he taught them, how to build things. So that's wonderful. So, and college isn't always the way. It's not going to be for everybody, but there are other ways. That's why I asked the question that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we can't forget that we are in rural Georgia. So there are children that are interested in agriculture. We have a small garden in the back of our yard. It grows enough that we can share with our community, but they are really taking an interest in that. There are ways that we can make this beneficial so that they can thrive. I just don't think that I don't think there's just one way to develop economically. And I think that way has been taught and sold to us as voters, as citizens. And I think people believe there's only one way to skin a cat when there's so many other ways to get that hair off.
We're kind of seeing we're seeing the negative impacts of that when people talk about all of these debts that they had over college, and some people didn't even use the degrees that they got trades and started businesses.
Exactly.
There's so many ways. My daddy was a sheriff and a farmer. Never went to college.
Oh yeah.
His kids did.
Absolutely.
But, so.
Absolutely. We have two boys. They're both in the military. One is currently in law school, and the other, he pretty much, his thing was, Mom, I'm gonna get my certification. And once I get my associate's degree, I don't want to go to school anymore. I'm like, okay, as long as you're happy, and you are doing well with what you've been able to do. I don't want to force you into debt. I don't want to force you to committing to something that you know you cannot complete. I don't want to do
Yeah.
that. And I think that is a way that separates our generation, the 50-year-olds, from the boomers. There was a mandate on us
Very
to
different.
perform well. And yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
understand. I want to meet my children. I want to meet young people where they are and help them get to where they want to be. And I think that will, if we all thought like that, we would see a phenomenal future. But I
Yeah.
think there are so many, because everything's a business. Even with schools, you see now that there are a lot of colleges that are converting over to Christian learning. We didn't have that before. So with that being
Yeah.
said, everything is adjusting. We just need to be able to adjust with it.
Okay. One more question, and then we're going to let you tell us about how, tell us about your campaign, how people can reach out to you. And I'm going to keep it on the education theme. With your background in law, policy, leadership training, how do you reform Georgia's, or how would you reform Georgia's education system to better align with workforce needs of your community?
So one of the things that I hope to do is here in Liberty County, because Liberty County is District 168. But one of the things that we need to do is we have a tremendous loss of teachers. Every session, every quarter, there's teachers that are leaving because we don't pay them enough. So in order for us to reform our school system and put our children on a winning path, we have to do right by our educators. So one of the things I'm really focusing on is basically increasing educator pay. And then we can build schools, because our schools are overcrowded. The teacher student ratio is just overwhelming. And I understand the stress of that. So once we can do that, we'll be able to take on more teachers, more schools, and then we can then be. I would love to introduce the agricultural system into our school system. I am a big
Very
proponent
interested.
of him. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much out there that we can do. I just think that it's not being thought of. So I would love to introduce an agricultural program. I want to be an asset to our school system to help with funding. I want to be an asset to help with anything that they need. I don't want to be a hindrance to our school. And that is one of the issues that we've had here in the county, where our current state legislator has been kind of like controlling the entire dynamic of the school system, from who's hired as a superintendent to who's not hired. I
Yeah.
think that is not my role. I know that not to be my role, and I do not want to step on those who know better, those who work that world every day. I just want to be an asset. I want to be able to assist them in getting them everything and anything that they may need. And that's how we're going to better help our children and get them to where they need to go.
So for
So
lack
just
of
one
a better
quick thing.
term, you want to bring home the bacon back to your district, or recoup some of those taxpayer
Yeah,
dollars that are
Yes.
going out
So
for other parts of
exactly.
the state back into
just
your
one-
community.
Exactly.
totally. Just one quick thing. So one thing that
Mhm,
I hope that you emphasize going forward in your campaign is
mhm,
that a lot of times people think that women, especially those who are very emotionally intelligent like yourself, that that's all they have to offer and that they don't have the practical, logical side. And that is not
mhm.
true, especially with you. So that's something that if I were you, that I would articulate all the time and then give like 3 examples, because the second that you show that you're emotionally intelligent, all of a sudden people go, okay, well, that's what you have to offer, and they
Yeah.
write it off. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, that's the most important thing. Like objectively, we're missing that in our society right now. That's the thing that we're
Right,
missing.
right,
It's most important to have both, right? But the fact is that you
right.
do. And so before they get a chance to write you off, I hope that you'll tell them everything you told us and more about the specifics and about the like the specific plans that you have. And I think you're going to do extremely well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. Since I've been in the race, and it's the folks who are, they're the steady readies for the current incumbent. They have dismissed everything about me. They've known the work that I've done. They've seen everything that I've done. And it kind of shocks me because, like I said, we're majority African American county. So to have seniors who are attacking me as being an educated African American woman who's contributed so much into the community and created jobs. I find it to be unfortunate, but nevertheless not stoppable. But we not stopping me at least. So
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the movement going. I'm going to keep the mission going, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep plowing away
Love it.
until everything I've talked about today is absolutely done.
Well, one of the things I always say is democracy demands competition. It demands it.
Yeah, I like
You
that.
can't
That's
just let
interesting.
leaders
Yeah.
stand there and keep getting reelected and they're not doing the things that they need to be done. I'm not saying either way, but democracy demands competition. It keeps us on our toes. And that's what the Constitution is all about. That's what the Constitution of the state of Georgia is all about.
Absolutely.
Electing the best
Absolutely.
representatives for the job. So,
And that's right.
yeah.
I
Sabrina,
like that.
before we leave, tell everybody how they can help your campaign, where they can go to find out more about you and your campaign.
Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me
Thank
on.
you.
I appreciate it. I've had such a delight. I was nervous at first, but this has been such a wonderful opportunity for me.
Good.
You can learn more about me at www.newby4georgia.com, and that's the word for. Please, if you like what you've heard and you appreciate me as a candidate, please leave a small donation, because this is a people power campaign and we cannot make any of those changes that I've talked about today happen without support. So I truly appreciate it.
Campaigns cost money, people. They
And
cost
repost,
money.
Yes,
repost,
it
repost.
does.
Exactly.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
get as many eyes on these candidates as you can. Again, help out $5, $10, $20, whatever you can afford to support our candidates. That'd be great. So,
Yeah,
Sabrina,
I would greatly appreciate
again,
it.
thank you for
so
joining
much
us
for
today.
being
It's
here.
been a
Thank you for your
pleasure.
time.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you. I really appreciate you.
No
Awesome.
worries. Godspeed, my friend.
Good luck.
Likewise. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Sunshine. She's a ray of sunshine.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, she said a lot of things that kind of hit home with me, talking about, her mother. Again, I told you how
You
I
knew
kept seeing my
I was gonna
grandmother,
dive right into that.
who died right after I finished high school, when I was in college.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I just, I just thought about her, and that's one of the things why I always talk about a servant's heart. You got to have it. You either have it or you don't. So you can tell when people who really selfless servants and are there for the right reasons or doing it for the right reasons, no matter what the naysayers say. You can see that, and that's why I love doing interviews like this, because it just comes out, and
Yeah, because she took her heart and she's like, here.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what she did.
You can tell. I mean, it just shows. It just shows. Everybody, we're not even going to get to the news today, because I know we've got some hard outs today, and I know it's a big news day with the Supreme Court gutting the Civil Rights Act. We'll talk about that a little bit next week. I hate that we're running right up against it. We had some technical difficulties in the beginning, so we're not able to touch on that. And it was such a great interview with Sabrina that we didn't want to cut that short. So, and also, Maddie's in Rome. She needs to get out and go experience it.
You saw the bust. Where is it? There it is.
Maddie is in Rome, everybody. So, go out and get some spaghetti bolognese for me, maybe a little red wine. I like it medium.
We need to have spaghetti in person at some point, like with your wife and my husband, so we can
we got to do it.
Yes.
We got to do it.
Because I've only heard stories, so we need to meet the whole fam.
We'll make it happen.
That needs to happen
soon when you get back.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, definitely. All right, everybody. That's our show for today. We appreciate you as always. Keep fighting the good fight out there. These are crazy times that we're in. It's almost like we're living in an upside down world, but this is our little contribution, and we're going to keep fighting to get good people elected in office who are going to stand up like Sabrina and the others that have been on the show and do the right thing. And with that, Godspeed, everybody. Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.